welcome to the first edition of the Rhodes Hour podcast, where we're going to talk about all things real estate, investing, finances, and leisure time activities in the upstate of South Carolina.
Come on.
I mean, that's all my favorite things to talk about.
There's the things to talk about.
I mean, have you ever seen that clip where it's the guy from Modern Family where he's like, I want to talk about my most favorite thing in life, and his wife's sitting beside him?
No.
And she's like, oh, what is that going to be? And he goes, residential real estate.
Oh, wait, that totally makes, that's funny. I need to watch that.
Phil Dunphy. He's great. He's great. He's a real estate agent on Modern Family. That's his job.
That's hilarious.
I know.
Man.
That kind of gets into that funny thing about they always kind of portray real estate agents on TV, kind of in a funny, goofy kind of way, and sometimes I think that kind of looks a little bit funny. You know what I mean? It kind of I think it portrays real estate agents in a different light than what really is more the day-to-day kind of grind as a real estate agent, and the difficulties and the processes and the communication, the education, all the stuff that you have to know to do that. Because it's a pretty hefty task, you know. And I love it, and I smile a lot, and I have a grand old time. But I'll tell you what, when somebody's buying or selling a house, that is super duper serious stuff.
Yeah.
I get deadly serious when I talk about that, especially when you're talking about somebody else's finances, somebody else's dreams, somebody else's wants and desires for their family. That's a big deal.
I mean, that's, for majority of people, that's the most expensive thing they're probably ever going to buy.
Yeah.
And then they probably do it, I mean, how many you say, well, this is a good question.
Most people go, 5 to 8 years in a house before they move, before they transition. And I think a lot of that, you can look at basically, I think, somebody's life, and you can see that, 5 to 8 years, there's usually a big, some sort of life transition that happens in that time. Kids graduate from high school. Babies are born.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people pass away. Things happen like that. So I think it's about 5 to 7 years, 5 to 8 years people spend in a house, and then it's time to go do something else.
When you're kind of doing these different clients in Greenville specifically, I mean, what are you telling them right now actively about the market? Like, what's the update?
So the market right now, I tell people we are basically in a 2 week at a time period. Okay, because this 2 weeks is different from the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It's been a funny year this year in 2024, and a lot of people's predictions of what was going to happen in 2024 is very different than what they're saying now is very different than what they said in January.
Yeah.
Because the Fed back in January was talking about 4 or 5 rate cuts as the year progressed. So people were thinking that summer and fall the rates were going to come down from a 7.5 to high fives, maybe 6, maybe high fives. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to happen this time.
So do we know why? Like, because that's across the board, isn't it?
The Fed has basically told everybody that the inflation has not been controlled the way that they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they thought, because you can't double the interest rates, you can't double that kind of money in a 12-month span and expect something good to happen. They knew they were going to put the brakes on the economy.
Yeah.
All right? They did. They put the brakes on everything. People still, especially I think home buyers and home sellers, I'll tell you a story what happened to me. And this happened to me just like last week.
Wow.
A friend of mine called me, said, hey, there is a house that came up for sale, and it's got a pool, and my wife wants a house with the pool. I said, great, let's go take a look at it. Really nice house. I think it was, I don't know, $650, $660.
Yeah.
Beautiful, one level, had a great pool in the backyard with a little party shed and the whole thing. We went and looked at the house. They said, great, we want to put an offer in on the house. I said, great, well, what are we going to do about your house? So we left that house and we went to their current home that they are living in, which is actually about a $650 price point.
And do they have equity in the house?
Beautiful. They have equity in the house. It's beautiful, so it was really more of a lateral move, but they wanted the pool.
Yeah.
We spent the next day and a half with their mortgage lender trying to work the numbers out. Point of the story is the Fed was supposed to lower the interest rates. My guy is sitting on a 3.2% interest rate on his house. he was looking at a 7.4 increase. The numbers just don't make sense right now. If you're in that 3.2, I think a lot of people are going to be sitting in those homes and they're going to be renovating. And they're going to be staying in there for a while until this whole inflation thing, interest rate kind of settles down and we get kind of a clearer picture. 2024 has been a strange year, okay? And throw something else in the mix. What's happening in November?
Election.
The presidential election.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
I have no idea what to expect.
I don't either.
Well, I mean, election and also real estate.
Yeah.
I have literally no idea how they're
Yeah.
going to correlate.
I think the people, what's going to happen, I think that people that have to move are going to move. I think the desire people that just want to change houses, there has to be some pretty strong motivating factors for people to give up a 3.2% interest rate and go to a 7.4. There has to be some sort of really motivating catalyst to get people to do that. You know, but if you're in a house and it's not working for you, then hey, you know, there's worse things that can happen to you. And honestly, if you look historically, I know that we've all been used to these 2.5% to 3.5% rates, right? Okay, that's really, really low. If you look historically, that is like unheard of.
Wasn't it like, is this right by saying it was like 13 to 15% in the 80s or something
Oh,
like
it
that?
was all the way up. I heard it was all the way up. I know a guy that had an 18% mortgage back in the 70s.
That's crazy.
Funny story. Another story. I love telling stories. I got a million of them.
Oh, yeah.
We were in the C. Dan Joyner office one day, and there was a bunch of guys in there about our age, and we were talking about interest rates and what happens if it was going to go up and what happens if it was going to change. And this seasoned agent, let's just say that.
Yeah.
he pokes his head around the door and he goes, now, I mean, I'm almost 50 years old, right? He looks around the corner and goes, you young whippersnappers. And I was like, hey, how you doing? He said, you don't know about interest rates. And I said, well, tell me about interest rates. He said, imagine putting your house on your credit card at 18%.
Wow. That's crazy.
Okay, so historically, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, we're used to that as people that have come to the market in the last 5-8 years, maybe first-time home buyers looking at their second home, and they came into this thing, and that's what they're used to. So the frame of reference is all, you know, where you come from is a huge frame of reference for people and what feels right. But if you're sitting in a 3.2% mortgage, you know, a lot of people are going to be hard pressed to go move right now.
Yeah. So yeah, for family that is wanting to move up to Greenville, I don't know when it's going to happen, but hopefully in the next year or so they want to move up here. I don't even know what to show them whenever they come visit to kind of explain what Greenville has to offer.
Well, let me tell you, Greenville's got, there are so many different places and there's so many different things to kind of look. You kind of got to go deeper on the questioning, okay? What do you really want to see? Where do you want to live? Is it a school system that you're trying to get your kids into? Do you have family members that are on one side of town versus the other side of town? You know, every side of town kind of has their own vibe and their own flavor. You know, right now, we're in northern Greenville County. We're up here by Travelers Rest, where I grew up. Devil dogs, all that kind of stuff. Been around here for a long, long time. Very different feel than Fountain Inn and Simpsonville. You know, I do think right now there's a lot of good opportunities for people that are buying houses. There is a lot of opportunity for housing down in the Simpsonville and Fountain Inn area because that whole area from Greenville all the way down to Columbia, there is a lot of wide open land. And we're up here in northern Greenville County. We're kind of bumping up against that North Carolina border. And so I think, if you ask me, I think in the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to see a huge push down Highway 26 into more of that Lawrence and Gray Court kind of area, just because there's so much land down there that, you know, production builders can come into town and they can build, you know, any size neighborhood they want to. They can get small parcels and go smaller neighborhoods, or they can go you big national, you know, production builders can come do in massive neighborhoods.
So when you're hanging out with your clients and they're looking at different houses to buy or maybe even sell, what are things that you're showing them about Greenville? What are the top things to do?
Oh man, I'll tell you. I've been in Greenville since 1986, okay? I mean, I was here through the whole transition. I mean, downtown Greenville was non-existent, okay? There were a few banks and insurance companies, and then at 5 o'clock, downtown Greenville was an absolute ghost town. You didn't go down there. There was nothing down there. I mean, all the buildings were shut down, the doors were locked, and the whole bit.
Wow.
And then there came one bar that started up, and it kind of went crazy after that. And I do believe that Knox White and the people that have kind of been in the planning and the vision for downtown Greenville have done an absolutely fantastic job with our downtown. It wins awards every year for the best downtown, best Main Street, best things to do in the whole bit. So to answer your question, the number one thing I like to show people about Greenville is I'd love to take them downtown Greenville and show them Main Street. And if you can go at night, it's 12 months out of the year they leave the Christmas lights up. And so all the lights are on, there's people are out, the stores are open. It's really, really nice. Main Street Greenville is just a great place to start.
And Falls Bridge, that wasn't always there.
That was not always there. That was actually a traffic bridge, and it covered the falls. I mean, nobody even knew the waterfall was down there. I mean, people would crawl around underneath it and stuff, but I mean, nobody ever, if you were downtown, it was never a focal point. So I think part of the planning, part of the vision, when they said we are going to get rid of the auto bridge and turn it into that pedestrian bridge. And that's a cool thing, that pedestrian bridge, that is a European design, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it's the only one like that in the United States. The way that it's suspended with the two poles and the kind of curved angles and the whole bit. There's actually two in Europe that are like that, but I'm pretty sure, there may be one more, but I'm pretty sure that's the only one like that in the United States.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is kind of cool. Yeah. And so people come down here, there's really stuff to see. I mean, we don't have, I think one thing that Greenville lacks, in my opinion, that would really push us to that next level of municipality where things happen a lot. We need a convention center downtown, okay? When I go to the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services convention every year, and it's Nashville, of course, Las Vegas, Orlando, San Antonio. We go all these different places, and they all have kind of a downtown, but they all have a big convention center. And I think that the city planners ought to find a place to put a pretty substantial size convention center. Man, it'd be a boon for downtown. You know what I mean?
I feel like Las Vegas gets all of those.
Oh.
Las Vegas gets like every convention ever.
Oh, gosh. Do you like Las Vegas?
I've never, I drove through Las Vegas, then I didn't stay.
I've been to Vegas probably 10 times.
Okay. Do you like it?
It's kind of a yes and no question.
Yeah.
I love it because it has everything that you want just at your fingertips, okay? If you're hungry, you're thirsty, you want to go see a show, it is all right there 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
But that's basically it. I mean, it is, if you drive outside of the downtown kind of area, from what I've seen, we went one time to the Las Vegas Speedway, and we did a supercar event one time, which was really fun. I got to drive a really race car, a Mercedes race car. It was a lot of fun. Out leaving the city center and going out there, it was like desolate. You ever fly into Las Vegas? It is literally like flying over the mountains. It's desert, desert, desert. Boom, there's this thing in the middle of the desert.
We went on a road trip when I was in college, and we drove across the whole country and everything, and we were coming from California, going through Las Vegas to then get eventually back to Greenville.
Yeah.
And we remember it being like absolute just desolate wasteland, and then out of nowhere, this massive city,
right.
You drive through the main strip or whatever it is for, 20, 30 minutes, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's
weird.
You can see it when you fly in. It's a funny thing to look at when you're flying on the plane. It's just like that, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But no, Vegas is fun. I like a little bit of gambling here and there.
Yeah.
I'm not a big gambler. I do like going to see shows and comedians and things like that when we're there. I did one time we ran a 10K, which was fun. We did the rock and roll 10K up and down the strip. They closed the strip off for the night, and we ran up and down that. That was a long time. That was 2015.
Wow, that's so cool.
I've been there a bunch.
That's cool.
Vegas is fun, but back to Greenville. I think Greenville, if we had a convention center, I think Greenville could really use that as the next piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, so taking my friends. So besides downtown Greenville, where else do we like to go? Well, I love to bring them to Travelers Rest because we got a cool little downtown. One place that we hadn't talked about a lot about recently is Greer.
Yeah.
The downtown in Greer just had a huge renovation. The city down there did a whole huge cityscape renovation in downtown Greer. I mean, crisscrossed the lights above the street, redid the streets, redid the sidewalks, and the whole bit. Downtown Greer is really, really neat.
How are the schools in the Greer system?
Let me just tell you about the whole upstate, because a lot of people ask me that. What about this specific? This is my answer to everybody. We are very blessed. We are very fortunate that in the upstate of South Carolina, all of our schools are very good. Our public school system is very good across the board.
Nice.
There's not a big discrepancy between one side of town and the other side of town. So I tell people, find out where you want to be. If there's a location you want to be in, I'll bet you that the school system is going to be great and your kids are going to have a good time. And I think a lot of it depends on the kid. If the kid's, willing to do the work and the parents are willing to help him or her, then, I think you're going to be great. But I think Greenville County as a whole does a great job with our public school systems.
Cool. So the Greenville schools, what is this whole school of choice thing? What does that even mean? I don't understand any of that.
So school choice, this has been battered around by politicians forever and ever and ever. Basically, what a lot of people want is they want their kids to go to private school, but they can't afford to go to private school. But if you look what you're paying in taxes, most of our taxes go to the school system. So the parents, a lot of people say, hey, let me have that money back. I'm going to spend that at a private school as a voucher for my kid to go there because I am paying into the taxes. And so that's kind of the crux of the argument about school choice is giving the parents back the choice of where their kid goes to school, not being, I don't want to say stuck, but not being forced to attend the school in which you are zoned for where you live. Because where you live it basically dictates what public school you go to.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, there's variances. You can get lottery systems and things like that. I know Eastside High School, there are a lot of kids that aren't zoned for Eastside that want to go to Eastside because it's a great school. It's a great public high school. They got a great athletic program. The academics are great. And I know a lot of people that want to go to Eastside that aren't zoned there. So the school system has come up with a lottery system. You can apply and you get a special permit, to go.
That's cool.
Yeah, special permission.
Speaking of permits, here's a complete curveball.
Okay.
What does it mean whenever a subcontractor says they need to pull a permit to add a bathroom into your house?
Okay.
Or, yeah.
That is going through the city, and the city inspectors and the building codes and all that kind of stuff. You basically have to go to the city and apply for a permit to do work if you're a contractor. Now, in South Carolina, we're very, the laws are really into the property owner's favor, that if you're a property owner, you can do work on your own house without having to go and get a permit. But there comes a little bit of a situation where I think if you're going to sell the house within 2 years or rent the house, then you need to have the permitting process, which means you have to go register the contractor, somebody with the license has to go pull the permit, which basically means go buy the permit from the city. Then as you go through the renovation process, the building inspector will come and inspect each kind of milestone that you're going. They'll do the roughing on the plumbing and the electrical. And if you're doing structure stuff, they have to come and look at that so they sign off on it. So when you get done, it's a way that the city kind of keeps track and make sure that what gets built is safe and is going to be functionable for people to live there. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
You go to some places around the world, and you can obviously see they don't have this stuff, and there's janky stuff, and there's EPA violations all over the place. You know what I mean? Because they don't have the same kind of code enforcement that we do. It's kind of like an HOA. You know, some people love an HOA, some people love the building permitting process, and some people don't. But in the whole scheme of things, I think it really adds a layer of safety, accountability, and I think that it helps your property value, especially being in a neighborhood like with an HOA. A lot of times there's people that move into HOAs or move into neighborhoods, and they may not keep their property up the way that the other neighbors do, and that, you know, that's when an HOA is good. But you know, everybody's got their own opinion on that. That's a whole huge can of worms. Is, do you like HOAs or not?
So you've been around the block with real estate. You know a thing or two. I'm sure you've seen people that just love HOAs, and then some people that just cannot stand them. What are the two big reasons for both sides?
Okay. The benefit of having an HOA, it keeps all of the properties on a certain plane of like maintenance and cleanliness throughout the neighborhood. People that don't want the HOA, you can go out into the more rural areas and you'll see a house, a mobile home. You'll see the next lot will have 10, you know, wrecked cars in it, and then there'll be another house. You know what I mean? So if you get outside, when you go out in more of the rural areas and there are no HOAs, then it's, you know, you don't know what your neighbor's going to do. But that creates a level of freedom for you. If you have cars that you need to work on, or you have equipment, or you are a contractor or own a grading company, and you've got some equipment that you need to store basically at your house if you don't have a business to go to, don't get in an HOA. Go out someplace out there and you can park all the tractors and you know, bulldozers that you want in your land. But HOAs are good because it depends on the enforcement level of the HOA board itself. Some are very, very strict. Some are really hard to get along with. I know there's one neighborhood in town that they are strict upon their garage doors. Like, they don't want you to have your garage door open more than 4 hours at a time. Wow. So that means, like, on a Saturday, you're out working in the yard, doing whatever, you know, they can come by and give you a little notice. Wow. You know, so, but it also maintains the cleanliness, and the property values stay up and hopefully go up as long as you get a good HOA board. And, you know, that's one of those things that you kind of have to dig into, and knowing what the kind of vibe of that neighborhood and how that HOA board is going to work and enforce is a big thing to think about when you're going to buy a house.
Yeah, I like HOAs. I live in one right now, but the main reason I like them is because they protect your property value. And when I'm thinking about property value, I'm also thinking about one day I'm going to sell this thing. Right. Are there any financial or legal considerations I need to have when I list my house for sale or consider selling my house?
It's a funny thing to think of, right? But I always ask my seller clients, can you sell this house? Okay? Not everybody can. If your house is, and usually a lot of times you got to make sure, and a lot of people call me when there's been a life event. You know what I mean? And I've gotten into several conversations with people, and we've actually had to put the house off. We had to hold off on listing the house because they had to go through the probate process because they didn't have the house deeded the correct way. Because there's two things that you ought to really think about when you are buying a house. Let's say you're buying a house, you and your spouse, okay? I always recommend that you put it in joint tenancy with right of survivorship, okay, on the deed, right? JTWROS, all right? And if that is the way that you got your house, and if one spouse passes away, there's no probate, it just immediately goes ownership 100% to the other spouse. I also would recommend that you put your house in a trust, okay? And then that trust owns the house. The beneficiaries get the house upon the owner's passing without having to go through the probate process. It's so much cleaner. And if you start looking at all my more affluent clients, they all have their houses in trusts. It's not super expensive to do that, to set that up. What it does is it saves the family a lot of time, money, and energy upon that owner's passing. If it's in a trust, it seamlessly goes to the beneficiaries. So do your family a favor. Get your house in a trust and name the people that it's going to go to, because, you know, it just makes life so much easier on the remaining people.
I have a random question.
Okay.
It's a legit question.
All right.
So let's say I inherit the house,
Yep.
get the $100,000, and I just don't want to pay the taxes. What if I were to refinance, cash out refinance the house? So now I got all my cash, but it's primarily debt, and then I probably have to keep like anywhere between 15 to 20% equity in the house. Then I sell the house, so then I only gain that 20%. Is that a way to avoid the capital gains tax?
I am not a CPA.
I've thought about it.
That's not a bad idea. I don't know. You have to be very careful when you do start doing stuff like that, because the IRS does not play around.
Yeah, they probably notice.
They will come find you. They will come find you.
It's like that happens in like a 3 or 4 day span. They're like, okay, dude.
Yeah, you're not doing that.
Yeah,
You're not doing that. Capital gains, short-term capital gains. One thing that you're going to have to do, if you, let's just say you own a house, right? You and your family's living in a house. You inherit a house. You are going to have to pay the 6% taxes on that house every year now, because you got a primary residence at 4%. You're going to have to go register that house with the county, you as the new owner, and you can't claim it as your primary residence. And so now you're going to pay the 6% investor rate on that house. Something to really consider, especially if you get into the more expensive properties. You could have $5,000 or $6,000. That's not uncommon, a year in taxes on just a regular house, because it's a 6% rate.
I've noticed that just pretty average houses honestly have a pretty high bill. My one of my rental properties, I mean, nothing crazy, like a $350,000 house.
Right.
Literally, it's $4,500 a year in taxes.
Yeah.
Which I think that's pretty steep.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
I mean, that's a lot a month.
Yeah, no, that's not
You
cheap.
know what I mean? That's not cheap.
It's like $500 a month.
You know, one thing I've thought about that the government could do, you know, because we're kind of in a, nationally and locally, we are in a housing shortage. We don't have enough houses. I think there's things that the government could do to spur on home owners, like investor guys, because there's people out there that have 20 or 30 investment houses. I mean, that's not uncommon at all. I know a bunch of guys like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
They got 20, 30 houses, but they don't ever want to sell them because they'll get killed on taxes. And there's really no benefit to do that. And I think that the government, who knows what's going to happen, but I think there's ways that the government could incentivize investors to sell investment properties that would alleviate some of the demand on the housing shortage.
I wonder if like the state is allowed to make such a big executive decision when it really does kind of impact the national market.
Yeah, I think they could. They can do anything they want to.
One thing that has, and you might know more about this, one thing that's happened recently is apparently wholesaling is now illegal. See, I used to do a lot of wholesaling. I don't do it anymore. I just don't have the time for it anymore. But I used to do a lot of wholesaling. And I found a lot of buyer investors that loved that I was doing wholesaling because I was doing the groundwork for them. And they're like, I don't care if you get paid. That's fine. I get a property on a good deal. But these big investors that are doing the work into renovating the properties for rentals or for selling them, they don't have time to go out and find and cold call properties.
Right.
But if now wholesaling is illegal, how does the investment market continue to move forward?
But I think that came about because you had institutional buyers now. Okay, you've got these big corporations that are coming in and buying the starter family priced houses, and they are taking them away from the starter family. You know what I mean? So I think that whole thing, I believe, is geared towards stopping those big national and global companies from coming in and buying all the $200,000 and $300,000 single family homes. You know, so I think that's the reason for the wholesaling issues that we're having now.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think just to put the stop on that.
So kind of following up the whole wholesaling thing, I'm not a licensed agent strategically, but I have a lot of friends who are investors who are licensed agents, and they will do some wholesaling. But now what they're having to do is, instead of wholesaling the property, they just represent either the buyer or the seller one way or another.
Right.
And then they just, because they can dictate their commission, they'll like literally make it like 15%.
Right.
And that's how they get their crazy wholesale
And
fee.
they get done.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me.
It is. It is all kind of, there's 1,000 different ways to make money in real estate.
Yeah.
I've been a big fan of real estate. I've been investing in real estate for almost 30 years now, you know, and there's all kinds of different ways to do it. But it just depends on what your comfort level is, where you want to get started, you know, and how much cash you got.
I love commercial, man.
I know.
But a wise man named Bill once said, big properties have big expenses.
Problems. Yeah, big problems. That's right.
I'm worried about it.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love to tell my friends that I love business. I love negotiating. That's like my bread and butter.
Right.
But when it comes to actual real estate on market purchases, my realtor has to handle all that. So what are things that I can expect that my realtor is going to do to help negotiate on my behalf for the best offer altogether?
I always tell people there's really 2 negotiations that we need to be aware of right from the get-go, okay? The first one is price. What we're going to put your house out to the marketplace as far as price. The second one is going to be repairs. And typically that repair negotiation is more difficult than the initial price negotiation. So that's where you got to have somebody that knows what they're talking about, because I'll tell you what happened. In 2021, South Carolina changed our contracts, okay?
I didn't know that.
So now we have a due diligence period in the contract, okay? That's it. There's no more repair request. There's no more as is. It is only a defined due diligence period with a termination fee if the buyer decides to walk, okay? Sure. Now, during that due diligence period, buyer needs to inspect, re-inspect, whatever they want to do during that whatever time period that's defined in that negotiation, okay? In the contract, the due diligence period, the seller is no longer required to repair anything.
Wow.
Okay? There used to be roof, HVAC, septic, wastewater, water supply, environmental, structural. There used to be this list of things that were required to be presented in good working order. But now, with the due diligence period, seller's not required to do any of that. That's where negotiation comes in, where if you're on the buy side or the sell side, they have to know what to do, okay? So if you're the seller, you're not required to do anything. Okay, but that gives the buyer an opportunity to walk, okay? If you guys can't come to some sort of negotiation, some sort of terms on those repairs, that's when things can get really, really tense and really, really sticky, because the buyer wants this and the seller's not going to do that, and it can be very, very challenging.
So when you're selling that house, say buyer discovers a bunch of things in the inspection report. They say, hey, we want you to fix all these things. Seller goes, no. Buyer walks away. So now the seller puts the house back on the property, but now the seller is aware of all these things that just came back in that inspection report.
Yep.
Does that mean that they legally have to notify a potential next buyer?
If they know of situations that have come up, okay, if the seller is made aware of any issues with the house, the simple answer is yes.
Wow.
They need to update their seller's disclosure.
And it has to include everything.
Well, it has to include what they know of. So if the buyer's agent's kind of typical, sometimes they'll cut out and they'll just, if they want 3 things repaired, they'll just send you the pages of the home inspections that match up to give you an idea of what they want repaired. But if you don't get the whole home inspection, you don't know what's on the home inspection. That's the buyer's property. The buyer paid for that home inspection. The seller doesn't have a right to it, and most of the time doesn't want to see it. You know what I mean? So, but if the seller and the listing agent are now made aware of it, it is incumbent upon that listing agent to make their seller update that disclosure statement, because that can come back to bite you later on.
Wow.
Remember that video we did about the air conditioning that after the fact?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. The same. So if you know now, you better go back and update your seller's disclosure.
That gives a crazy amount of leverage to the buyer.
Oh,
In
yeah.
that first situation.
Yeah.
Because they're almost like teasing at the fact that they could go, I have this 3-page thing from a licensed inspector. I want $10,000 off the purchase price. And if you don't, I'm going to walk away. And now you have to disclose all these things to a new buyer.
That's true.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
They need to update their seller's disclosure for sure. If they come to new information about any sort of condition, problems, defects with the house, that needs to be put in the seller's disclosure. And that seller's disclosure, I tell people all the time, whenever we do a listing and we're doing the paperwork for it or whatever, I say that is the most important document that we're going to mess with and we're going to handle during this whole process, because that has to be right. There's a lot of back-end problems that can come if the seller doesn't disclose.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking this whole time.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
screwed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have to say it or
Yes.
else.
Well, there's a whole continuing education class that's called Disclose, Disclose, Disclose. That's the whole class. You know?
Jeez.
I know.
All right, I've decided. I want to
Okay.
list my house.
All right.
What do we do?
Whoa. Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What kind of condition is your house in?
I think it's in great condition.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Yeah?
It's pretty good. Roof is like 5 years old.
All right. That's good.
HVAC is also 5 years old.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
All right. Any issues with the house? Do you have any electrical issues, any plumbing issues that you know of?
Electrical is good. Plumbing, actually a lot of the faucets are the opposite. So hot water's on the right or left, whatever it is. And then the toilets, some toilets in the house fill up with hot water instead of just normal cold water.
Really?
Bunch of weird things.
We should probably get that looked at.
Right.
Okay, we should probably get that looked at.
Okay.
That's not supposed to be like that. So when you go to sell that house, the inspector is going to kill you on the home inspection report for that. I mean, that's going to be one of those things that's going to come back, and you're going to have to fix it at some point probably, or you're going to have to give some sort of compensation to the buyer and let them fix it.
I had a buddy of mine who's he's a plumber, and he said, yeah, you probably need to fix this. But I was like, is it damaging the house? And he's like, not necessarily, but your toilets are gonna the wax ring in the toilet. He said that'll age 10 times faster.
Yeah, you're not supposed to have hot water in the toilet tank.
Yeah,
that's kind of a funny thing. It sounds to me, wow, depends on how far it goes. That may start with the water heater.
Yeah, it's tankless. I don't know if it makes any difference or not.
That could be a super easy fix, just to swap the lines at the water heater where the water comes out.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it only comes from 2 spots.
If all of them, all of them are that way, and all the toilets get hot water and all the cold water handle is hot, that may be an easy fix right at the tank.
You literally just switch the 2 things.
You just swap them.
And that also makes sense in the install too. The guy probably was just tired and put the wrong things in the wrong spot.
Totally easy.
Okay, that's better.
You shouldn't have to live with that. I'll tell you a funny story. We lived in this house for like 11 years. And we had terrible bathrooms. They were just terrible. I mean, I don't know why. But we just lived with them, just like you are, okay?
Yeah.
You know what we did? We finally said, all right, enough of this. We're going to renovate all 3 bathrooms, man, and we knocked out a wall and made the master bath just totally awesome and the whole bit. And then we ended up selling the house. But my point is, we lived with it bad for like 9 years, and then we finally got around to fixing it. And then we said, I think we're going to sell the house now.
Well, I bet the renovations at least help the value.
Totally help the value on the house. But it was just funny because now I'm to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to live with that anymore. Something like that, I'm just going to get it fixed because I want to enjoy where you live. You know?
That's funny.
You should enjoy where you live, and you shouldn't have that funny, weird thing happen to you all the time.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Let me know if you need a good plumber. I got a good plumber recommendation for you.
I might need a plumber. Here's a question. Personal, just strategy question.
Okay.
All right, so I got a house. I got $100,000 in equity. I sell it, and let's say I net $100,000
Okay.
and I buy my next house.
Okay.
Is it smartest for me to take that $100,000 and put it just straight down to the next property, or should I keep a couple of it, a couple tens of grands, and then renovate the house?
Totally depends.
Okay.
That you can do a bunch of different stuff. I think the number one thing that people do is they do take that money and they put it down on their second house, because especially everybody wants to lower their mortgage payment. Okay, get closer to paying off your house. Awesome. But if your house does need some renovations, I tell people all the time, just like the whole bathroom thing I did, renovate the stuff, get it done before you move in. I mean, I've lived in probably 10 houses, okay? And every single one of them, if I don't do it when I move in or before I move in, I never get around to doing it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to move all your furniture in, then create dust and all kinds of mess and construction debris and bringing the materials and hauling materials out while you're still trying to live there. I mean, you certainly don't want to do a kitchen after you're trying to live there.
Sounds
so
terrible.
If you're in that situation, like you said, you make $100,000 off a house and you're going to buy something that needs some renovation, I would say, just for your personal life, just for your own living, fix it before you move in, and then when you move in, you'll love your house even more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or if you don't need to fix it, take that money and go find something to invest it in. You know what I mean? I mean, put it in your investment account, put it in your brokerage account. Go buy a rental house if that's something that you're inclined to do. You know what I mean? I mean, it's very, very, not most people, it's not very often that all of a sudden they get a windfall of $100,000. You know what I mean? That's when it goes like that other video we talked about, personal wealth. I still believe in that 100%. You know, that it's almost like a forced savings account. When you buy a house and you're gaining that 6-8% equity every year in that house, you're paying down your mortgage. It's almost forced savings. It's forcing you to do that. And that's always going to be beneficial to you when you go to sell that house.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
So it depends on what you want to do. Take the $100,000, put it back in the house, lower your mortgage payment. Do some renovations, put the rest of it in your brokerage account. Put all of it on the house.
So if I'm married, and it's me and my wife, we've lived in a house for a few years now, we sell it, profit $600,000.
Yep.
Do we have to pay taxes on it?
I think that the limits are going to change if they haven't changed already. Because up until recently, it was if you made $500,000 in profit on the sale of your personal residence as a married couple, that money was not taxed.
And single.
As a single, it's $250,000.
Okay.
That you will not pay tax on that if it is your primary residence.
But then you think it's going to change, though?
I think the limits are going to change because house prices have gone up. I think they're going to go, I'm pretty sure I heard it was going to go to $500,000 for a single person and $1 million for a married couple.
It's pretty nice.
That's pretty nice.
Did you know that if you have $5 million in a money market account that grows at 5%,
Yep.
that equates to $20,000 a month in interest earned indefinitely, like forever?
Forever.
Isn't that
Never
cool?
touch the principal.
Yeah.
Never touch the principal.
You can take out that $20,000 every month.
Yep.
With $5 million in there.
That's right.
So I just need to go find $5 million.
That's it. We'll just get to that $5 million mark and you'll be good to go. Then you probably want 10.
You're right.
You're like, well, I just can't. I got $5 million just sitting right here.
What do I could do if I got?
Go do that.
I'm
gonna go buy a $20 million apartment complex someplace.
Oh my God.
You know?
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, seriously, you start getting into that sort of world, and things become awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to start somewhere, though.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big proponent of real estate investing. You know, I've been doing it for a long, long time. I love it, and I think it's one of the best avenues and vehicles for people to make a lot of money. You know?
Yeah. All right, here are just rapid fire questions
Okay.
that you may or may not know, I don't know,
All right.
about taxes and gains.
Okay.
All right, if you live in a house, personal residency, your property taxes are 4%.
Correct.
Okay. If you don't live in it, it's an investment property, it's 6%.
Correct.
Okay, when you sell that property, what's the line between short-term capital gains and normal capital gains, and then not having to pay any taxes at all.
If it's your primary residence, you got to stay there for 2 years.
Okay, and that gives you no taxes at all.
No taxes on the gain up to those limits.
That's right. Then the capital gains.
If you make more than that, then you have to pay capital gains on the above that.
What if you lived in the house for only a year?
Then you think you got to pay capital gains on all of it.
But what is the difference between capital gains and short-term
I don't
capital?
know.
Right?
I don't know.
I don't get it either.
I don't know.
Never understood that.
I haven't looked at that.
I probably do
try not
need
to
it.
pay capital gains tax.
At all?
I try to pay as little taxes as I can.
Yeah, I do too.
You know what I mean?
I need
And
to
so,
get better at
I have an accountant for that. And if you don't have an accountant, get you a good one.
Yeah.
And let them handle all that kind of stuff. But my thing is, rarely do I sell a property. And if I was going to sell a property, I would probably do a 1031 tax exchange, which means you take all of that money, don't pay any tax on any of it, and put it into another investment property. And the rules have gotten kind of eased up on what kind of properties you can trade. I say trade because that's what it's called. This kind of exchange. So, you take one house and you can take that profit and go buy another house. Or you can buy one apartment building that says 10 units. You've owned it for 5 years. It's, you got a ton of equity in it and you want to go buy a 25-unit apartment building. 1031 tax exchange will allow you to do that without paying any taxes on that. So the way the 1031 tax exchange really works is you can do that as many times as you want to. But when that last property is bought and that last property, let's say you pass away and it gets sold, at that point the taxes will be due on that last property.
So it's kind of a win-win for both parties.
It is.
It is.
I mean, it's a way to build up net worth, and it's a way to build up property without getting dinged every time you sell something. There is a process that you have to go through for a 1031 tax exchange. You got to hire an intermediary, and that can cost. That sometimes can be $3,000 or $5,000 or $7,000, depending on how much the property is and what's involved in it. And you start getting into commercial buildings and things like that. And in the commercial world, most people, anybody that's been doing it for 5 minutes knows about 1031 tax exchange. And usually most sellers are pretty agreeable to allowing the 1031 tax exchange because the seller has to do some work for the buyer. You know what I mean? So there's some things that you have to, documents you have to produce, things that you have to do. So it's kind of one of those things. Make sure you get you a good agent that knows about the 1031 ins and outs and can get you through all those hoops.
Yeah.
So
when you're selling a property, what are the best strategies to selling the house and marketing the house?
Okay. Super important. Pricing the house correctly. That goes back to the art and the science of pricing the house. And those first 2 weeks are super important because those are the people that are actively looking for a house like yours. And if you get them in the front door, they're a real good possibility they're going to write an offer.
Yeah.
Marketing the house, there is a million things you can do, okay? Just some of the low-hanging kind of fruit you got to do is you got to have great photos, okay? Listing photos are key. You got to have great photos. You got to have great marketing materials. I love video. Video gives people a walkthrough. There's all kinds of different tools that we use. There is signage, okay? We have a text line on our signs that you can roll up to a house, and if it's got the text sign on there, you text that number, it knows that your phone is out in front of that house, and it gives you all the information on there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. And then as a listing agent, I get that phone number, and then I call them. Hey, are you sitting out of 123 Main Street right now? I'd love to help you. Let me show you that house. It is kind of cool. There are things that we do that not everybody does. Digital is huge, okay? Digital marketing, online marketing is where everything is. That's where everybody starts looking for their house. So that's why it goes back to listing photos. The listing photos, the description, the video, all that stuff is super key in capturing that buyer before they ever even get into the house, okay? Ultimately, there are a million different ways that we market houses. Digital, of course, is huge. We do all sorts of stuff to go above and beyond to help our clients, you know? Well, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think this wraps up our first episode of the Rhodes Real Estate Hour. I don't think we call it that. What do we call it? Bill's Real Estate Time. No, we don't say that either. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for coming in. It was a lot of fun, and we'll do it again soon.
Sounds good.
Got it. Thanks.